Hi and welcome to this SIAM series where I'm going through various IT management approaches, methodologies, activities and practices, and I'm going to be giving you the main headline points and the base foundation knowledge you need to know. I'll also be discussing some of my real-world applications of these activities and practices in various organisations. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and click the bell for those updates. Okay, so let's get to it. Today I'm going to be covering off key concepts within SIAM, Service Integration and Management. We've already covered off SIAM layers and SIAM structures in previous videos, so check those out on my channel. This video is going to briefly cover drivers for SIAM. So, okay, when you say drivers, what do you mean exactly? So, think along the lines of something that's going to be creating and fueling activity. Think triggers. Think something that's going to make an organisation want or have a will, if you like, to move towards a SIAM model. There will be something there. Something will have happened. There will be some kind of driving force there. So in the context of SIAM, it's really important to get to the root, to the core, to the true reasoning why an organisation wants to move to this model. And this is what we mean by drivers. If you can establish what the root is, what the core is, what the real reason, the true reason, the driver, the business driver as to why an organisation wants to move to this model, this is going to help you massively when it comes to things like defining the purpose. And it'll also fall into the business case for transitioning and keeping the momentum going and the focus, making sure things are moving as you go through that roadmap. More on that in another video. In terms of the drivers generally, it's likely to be dependent on the organisation and the industry and the size and a whole bunch of other considerations. There's going to be things like the business requirements. Maybe the business is thinking, we need better value, it's costing too much, or maybe the costs are unclear, there's lots of smoke and mirrors in the way, we don't understand the cost. Maybe there's a governance driver of some kind, assurance, quality, complexity. But maybe it's just not the right mix of service providers. There's going to be a whole load of different business requirements. There's going to be capability questions. There's a complexity element to it. It will depend on the type and the size of organisation. And certainly if there's any regulatory requirements, that has a part in there as to those drivers. Budget, like most things, has its part to play in there. And timescales as well. So these all contribute to the overall drivers. There's also an element of appetite for things like loss of direct control or risk appetite. All of these things will start to come into the mix. We can think of drivers as generic in the SIAM world, and there's 5 groups. And those 5 groups are service satisfaction drivers, service and sourcing landscape, operational efficiencies, external drivers and commercial drivers. So let's just dig into each one of those briefly. So if we start with service satisfaction drivers, items such as service performance, service provider interaction, clarity of roles and responsibilities. I'm a big fan of something called a RACI matrix, where there's an element of just exactly that point, making sure it's clear in terms of roles and responsibilities. Who's responsible for something? Who's accountable for something? Who do we need to consult? Who do we need to keep informed? Other elements of service satisfaction drivers would be slow pace of change, demonstration of value, really difficult. I've created another video about a balanced scorecard specifically about this. Do check it out. And also collaboration maybe is not happening with service providers, or maybe there's an element of delivery silos in there. The second group, so in group 2 we have service and sourcing landscape, where we have drivers such as external sourcing, shadow IT, that's sometimes called stealth IT, where the business might go out and source a service of some kind, but perhaps not involving IT. and then suddenly the business becomes unstuck when they need to plug it in or connect it into the infrastructure. So shadow IT, sometimes called stealth, multi-sourcing, increasing the number of service providers, maybe inflexibility of contracts. It is worth noting actually on that point that in the SIAM model, it is possible to have shorter or more flexible or more flexibility in terms of the model when it comes to contracts. So if you think about SIAM in terms of how that operates over an ecosystem, you can actually remove service providers much easier. So certainly a consideration. In group 3, we've got operational efficiencies. So drivers which are related to improvement or efficiency type activities. Maybe just service management capabilities are generally not good. It could be as simple as that. It could be data and information flows. Think a Barshi technique to map data flows here, of course. Data and information standards. I always like to ask the next question around there. Do you have a common data dictionary as part of your integrated approach? Good question to ask. And then finally, tooling. So for example, lots of service providers talking to each other, exchanging data and information. That can be quite problematic and can be quite a challenge if you don't know what you're doing. SIAM can help here for sure. Perhaps you might have also heard of the swivel chair approach. Maybe that resonates with you in that you're entering manually system into data into system number 1 just so system number 2 can get it and use it. Again, SIAM can help here. In group 4, we've got external drivers. So this relates to things like governance or policy related drivers. Perhaps some legislation has been passed recently that changes something. Sarbanes-Oxley is a really good example, and I'm from a Sarbanes-Oxley environment. There's certainly elements there in terms of governance and oversight that really needs to be thought through. Perhaps there's a government or a state policy that's come about that means things have changed. Likewise, if you're in the public sector, there's certainly policy related elements there that could well be a driver. And then finally, in group number 5, commercial drivers. So when we think about commercial drivers, we need to think from the service provider perspective and also the service integrator. So they're SP and SI related. Think changes that are going to be affecting things like tooling that's used or the existing processes or interfaces of some kind, perhaps governance and so on. In terms of the service integrator, perhaps there's some considerations in the roadmap there that needs to be thought through. So when we talk about roadmap, we're talking discovery and strategy, plan and build, implement, run and improve. Okay, so that's it. Please do subscribe to my channel. There's plenty more information to come, and please do subscribe and like. Thank you.